It is Tuesday, 23rd of April, 2024. It's St. George's Day in England, whatever that stands for or means. Although you might think it's St. Paddy's Day, judging by the Boston green that I'm wearing, the Boston Celtics. Big shout to Verna, who gifted me this top at my recent speaking engagement in Boston. So I'm just back from my American trip, which all in all was a mixed bag of different experiences, but I would say was highly fulfilling and worthwhile overall. So I got to do speaking engagements in Boston, Philadelphia, and New Haven. There was to be a fourth event in New York City, but I had to cancel that due to lack of ticket sales. So, in a greater metropolitan area of some 8 million people, only five were remotely interested in coming out to hear information of the type I normally speak about. I think there's a message there somewhere about what's happened to New York City and so many of these other areas of the United States. But just want to thank everyone that did turn out to the events. I got to experience the eclipse on the 8th of April. I saw a small amount of coverage through the eclipse glasses, but I was quite a way out of the zone of totality, so there wasn't a whole lot to see. And all in all, I would say it was pretty disappointing. It was a bit of a damp squib. It is what it is. It came and it went. All kinds of doom-laden prophecies have been attached to this eclipse, but you get that all the time anyway. Eclipses actually happen all the time. And whatever happens in the world is going to happen regardless of what goes on up there, I feel. I do want to mention the flight back, though, because on the journey back to Heathrow, I got to view a movie which I've seen probably 25, 30 times in my life. It's one of my favorite films of all time. I've enjoyed it from way back, even before I woke up. And I feel that some of the themes contained in this film tie into what I've been doing with this God series of videos. So this is God 5.0. I want to introduce some new ideas and kind of reiterate some previous themes. So the movie I'm talking about is Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece classic, 2001, A Space Odyssey. It seems every time I view this film, I spot something new in it, which is part of the genius of Kubrick. He was able to strip so many layers of meaning into his narratives, and you can decode different elements of metaphor and allegory every time you view it. Big shout to Sean McCann, who does a great podcast called Wake the Dead. Sean's done a huge amount of analysis of what goes into Kubrick's movies, and he's uncovered a whole lot. So Stanley gives the audience an esoteric narrative, which is the one for the masses. As the occultists who run the world would see it, the profane masses, spiritually ignorant masses. But there's always exoteric elements to the story. So in terms of what the masses were given with 2001, there's some preposterous themes being pushed. The idea of evolution, the idea that humanity started off as apes and then kind of evolved up the scale, which is ridiculous. And also the idea that you can land a rocket and build bases on a luminary, a light in the sky, which is what the moon is. There's no evidence that the moon is a solid rock that you can land anything on. And anyway, you could never get up there due to the Van Allen belt and due to the fact that we seem to live in some kind of enclosed system whereby you can only go so high into the Earth's atmosphere and no further. So the idea of outer space and galaxies and planets and this infinite universe that just goes on forever and ever and ever and all these stars is also preposterous in my view. So that's what's in 2001, but you've got to look beyond that to discover what Stanley would have been communicating. And this is all pointing towards him being very highly clued in on great occult knowledge and being able to cryptically communicate a lot of that to us. So I feel the opening sequence in this film ties in many ways to the themes that I've been exploring in this God series, and also the recent conversation I had with Eric Dubay. So, to reiterate, in the opening scenes of this film, which is titled The Dawn of Man, you have a group of apes. They're living in this primordial landscape. It's evidently before humanity has got there or evolved according to the storyline. And these apes live in fear, basically. They eat vegetation by day, so they're vegetarians, and they gather around a water hole. And then at night, you see them all huddled together in a cave in great fear of what lies out beyond the cave. And in one scene, you see one of the apes getting attacked by a leopard, a predator. So they're in fear of their lives. They're in fear of being attacked and killed by predators. So it's primal states of fear, which we still all seem to have deeply embedded within us. Then, at a key point, this black monolith, which is the main icon in the movie, appears outside the cave one morning when the apes go outside. And they all gather around it and they're in awe and wonder of what it could be. And the monolith is an icon, a motif which recurs throughout the movie. And it's all about leaps in human consciousness and going to the next level in terms of what we experience. And every time there's one of these leaps, the black monolith appears. So it's hinted at that it's been placed there by some kind of supernatural force, which we might consider God, and it affects these beings. So shortly after they've experienced the monolith, one of the apes, named Moonwatcher, discovers the ability to kill. So up to that point, they've been vegetarians. And in one scene, you see him looking at a pile of bones of some dead animal, and he picks up one of the bones, and he realizes it can be a weapon to kill and dominate other beings. So a short while later, there's a showdown at the waterhole between these rival tribes of apes. And Moonwatcher attacks one of the other apes with this bone and beats him to death. From that point on, this particular tribe is the dominant one because it's discovered how to kill. Also, it's very key that you see these apes beginning to eat the meat of animals that they've killed. So they're killing other beings and eating their flesh. And it's at this point that it's hinted at that they begin to evolve into humans. And in the next scene, it leaps all the way to the space age, and you see all these spaceships and stuff. So it seems the only way that these apes were able to achieve this leap in consciousness is when they discovered how to dominate and kill other beings. And it seems the supernatural force, which we might choose to call God, gifted them with that knowledge. So, what kind of moral message does that send us? It's suggesting to us that those who thrive, survive, and dominate in society, in this reality, are the ones who are prepared to kill, who are effectively psychopathic in nature. And I feel that's a very good metaphor for the type of society we do have, where criminals who engage in activities like crimes against humanity, genocide, mass murder, and complete control and subjugation of others are the ones who thrive, survive, and prosper in society. Meanwhile, ones who exercise compassion, care, elements of humanity, of sympathy, empathy towards others, are the ones who get dominated, are the ones who get trodden all over, are the ones who are caused to suffer. So I think there's a statement there about the true nature of whatever force dominates this realm currently, whether that's the original creator, God, or whether this place has been usurped by some kind of lesser god, which we might call the demiurge or these other names that are ascribed to it. And I always say that if that's the case, because people make this argument, they make this excuse, and they say, well, it's not the original creator God that's in control of this place anymore. It's been hijacked by some demonic force, and that's why there's so much pain and suffering and death in the world. My question is always, well, where was the original God of creation when this hijack took place? You know, lying back on his hammock, sipping on a cocktail and saying, can't be bothered. Got a great video clip from a movie from the 90s that I want to insert into this video shortly. At least the version that's not going on YouTube. Because if I attempt to put this on YouTube, it will, of course, get taken down on copyright grounds. I also want to read out some comments from the mailbag, the virtual mailbag, which have been received in response to points that I've made in previous videos. I'll be getting around to that shortly. At this point, though, I want to insert a music video. I recently had a great conversation with my good friend Daniela in Italy, and we were talking about the music and the lyrics of Howard Jones. Howard Jones would appear to be a very deep character who knew a thing or two and put it into his pop songs in the 1980s. A lot of the themes that he put into his lyrics would have been missed and not fully appreciated, I feel, due to the catchy sort of chart-friendly nature of his records. And they would have just been overlooked. But I do want to have an ongoing series, which I'm going to put on my Patreon for my Patreon supporters, where myself and Danny look into the lyrics of some prominent pop groups, mainly from the 80s, because we're both fans of 80s music. And one group I want to really examine, we're going to do Tears for Fears next, but beyond that, the group is Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode had some very interesting songs. Back when I was working as a music journalist for various magazines like Blues and Soul and Mix Mag and Music and a few others, I used to interview a lot of producers and bands and music makers. And whenever it was soul singers or R&B artists, they would always cite Stevie Wonder as an influence. So whenever you asked who influenced their music, 90% of the time, Stevie Wonder. When it came to producers and bands in the electronic dance music field, it was always Kraftwerk and Depeche Mode. So Depeche Mode are highly thought of within the music world in terms of their contributions, not just throwaway pop songs, but some deep messages. One of their most controversial songs from the mid-80s, I think it was about 1984, 85, was a song called Blasphemous Rumours. It was very controversial, as you'll hear from the lyrics, just about to play the video. It had to get swapped out with a song called Someone as its main A-side because the record company, Mute, came under fire so much from certain parties who were objecting to what Martin Gore, the songwriter, was putting forward in the lyrics. Going to play that video now. I think it really speaks to the themes that we've been getting into in these videos. And way back in the 80s, here were Depeche Mode asking some of these same questions. So the official story of how this song came about, according to an article in spin.com, is that the song was written as a response to the suicide of Martin Gore's sister. Martin Gore said in an interview, "I was going to church a lot at the time, not because I believed in it, but because there was nothing else to do on a Sunday," he says. "I found the service very hard to take seriously. The whole setup is quite handy, but I'm not sure that's what God intended. Particularly a part of the service called the prayer list, where the preacher rattles off the names of those sick and about to die. The person at the top of the list was guaranteed to die, but still everyone went right ahead thanking God for carrying out his will. It just seems so strange to me, so ridiculous, and so removed from real experiences." So let's take a listen to this song, Depeche Mode, Blasphemous Rumours. So You can see why that song was so controversial back in the day, but I think they raise some very interesting questions in it. I was having a light-hearted conversation with a friend just recently because you have to when it comes to this God stuff and the nature of reality and stuff. It's so easy to get bogged down in the philosophical side of it and the darkness and the devastation of what we appear to find. Sometimes you have to focus on the light-hearted elements and just how ridiculous and absurd these lives are, this reality is. As I've said many times, it's like living through a Monty Python sketch gone live, except nobody thought to tell us that we're in it. So we were just having a laugh about this idea of God, and we had this ridiculous image of this old man in a flowing white gown with a long white beard. And he's looking down at what he's created, this world, and he's observing how utterly fucked up it is and what a complete clown show it's become. And there are so many flaws in creation. There are so many flaws in nature. There's so much violence and death and destruction when you look at the animal kingdom and the food chain and all this, as I've mentioned many times. And he's looking down at it all from a cloud, probably. And he's scratching his head and he's going, oh dear, I proper fucked up there, didn't I? Oh, what a balls up. You know what? I can't be bothered. You lot are on your own. I'm done with this. And then he goes off and reclines on his hammock and falls asleep and has a snooze. That will be blasphemous to many people, but as you can probably tell, I gave up worrying what other people think about the comments that I make on here a long time ago. It is what it is. This is my channel, and I'll say whatever I want to say on it. If people don't like it, they are, of course, welcome to jog on to the next channel or start their own and say what they want to say on there. So I think there's some dark, twisted humor in that idea. And that brings in the film clip that I just want to play now before I get into some of the correspondence that I want to read out, get a bit more serious again. So I remember when this movie first came out, 1998, I considered it blasphemous at the time, this particular scene that I'm about to play, because I was in a different mind state back then. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really going too far. And, these filmmakers are really taking risks with this and really pushing the envelope. And they were. So, what I'm talking about is The Acid House, which is a story by Irvine Welsh. It was originally a novel published in 1994, and they made a film version of it in 98. And Irvine Welsh served as the screenwriter. So, this scene would have been penned by him. It's called The Granton Star Cause, and you got this lad called Bob or Bob in Scottish dialect. It's set in Edinburgh. He's in a pub, and this old Raj, this old tramp, comes up to him and starts chatting to him, and then he reveals who he is. So I'm going to play this clip now, and it comes with an extreme strong language warning. So it's not one to play in front of the kids. And just be aware that there's some very strong language in it, okay? That's the disclaimer. But my view of this scene has shifted majorly. And now I see it as very, very funny and actually a very astute observation on the nature of God if we're going to take a humorous approach to it all. So here it is. I mean, that is just class. I'm not dead. I just didn't give a fuck. Wouldn't it be hilarious if God turned out to be a character of that nature? So many people have said to me, they've tried to offer me some warnings, and they've said you shouldn't be addressing God in this way or thinking of this force in this way. But why? Aren't these lives all about searching for knowledge? What else could they be about other than asking questions? And that's all I'm doing. I'm asking questions. And in many ways, I feel I'm preempting the universal creation to prove me wrong. So, I'm asking whether God is really a benevolent entity or whether, in fact, it's seeking to do harm and thrives on death and pain and suffering and all this stuff. So I kind of want to be wrong. Well, I definitely want to be wrong. And I'm looking for signs that I am wrong. And I don't want to claim that I'm suffering any more than anyone else in my life, because clearly some very good things go on in my life. And I'm very privileged in many ways, and I am grateful for that. I do express gratitude for the blessings that I've got in my life. But I thought I would try this manifestation idea just recently. Again, give it another go. So, in the last video, which was titled Manifestation Flaws, I got into this kind of new agey sort of idea, which is present in some of the Eastern religions, that we manifest our own experienced physical reality according to the will and the intent that we apply to it. So, I thought I'll give it a go and I'll really try and put it to the test. So there was a situation which I really wanted to come into reality in my life, and I focused my intention on it, and I tried to imagine that it was already done. I already had it, which is what practitioners of this idea tell you must do. So I did all that, followed all the guidance, and guess what? It didn't happen. Didn't get what I wanted. It went somewhere else. And I think this can simply be explained by things will be what they will be, regardless of whether you want it or try and will it into existence or not. Some things happen, some things don't happen. Some things happen a certain way, other things happen a different way. So the whole idea is flawed. And as I say, I got into this in the last video, but I didn't go into my coffee shop analogy as deeply as I wanted to. And afterwards, I felt there were some other tenets that I should have added to that metaphor. So I want to go over it again because it highlights how I feel about this whole dynamic of so-called manifestation, the idea that the universe gives us what we want, but only if we follow certain rules, only if we do it in the right way. So the analogy is you've gone into a coffee shop, and here are some points which serve to illustrate what we're talking about here. So, number one, you go into a shop and you ask for a coffee. The server refuses. You ask why. She says, because you didn't ask in the right way. You ask, well, how am I supposed to ask? She says, it's not her job to tell you, and you need to figure it out for yourself. I mean, that's what people who espouse this theme tell you. You've got to ask for it in the right way. And if you don't get it. And there's no rule book to tell you how you should ask. You're just supposed to know. And if you get it wrong, oh well, you get it wrong. Number two, you're gasping for a coffee. You go into the shop and you ask for one. The server refuses. You ask why. She says, you wanted it too much. This is what we hear. You can't want something too much. You've got to wish for it and then let it go. Because if you fixate on it and you keep wanting it day after day, you won't get it because you wanted it too much. So presumably, if you're starving and homeless, and what you really want is a good meal and somewhere to lay your head for the night, some shelter, you can't think about that every day. You're supposed to just put it out there. I would really like a meal and some shelter, and then let it go and be homeless and starving for however long it takes for that wish to be fulfilled. Yeah, great. Great system. Number three, you ask for a coffee. The server gives you a tea. You say you wanted a coffee. The server says she knows, but sometimes you get the opposite of what you want. You ask what kind of sense that makes. She says it's not her job to tell you, and you have to figure it out for yourself. How many times have people experienced this? You wish for something, you try and will it into being, as I did in my experiment of the other day, and you get the opposite of what you wanted. You wanted coffee, you got tea. So what's the fucking point of this dynamic being in place then? If indeed it is, if that dynamic can be present. Number four, you ask for a coffee. The server takes your money. You're waiting fucking ages, but no coffee turns up. You ask when it's coming. The server wags a finger and says you have to be patient and you'll get the coffee when it's good and ready and not a moment before. Again, this goes back to the idea of the starving guy. in the street, wondering when he's going to get that meal and somewhere to lay his head. And the universe is basically saying, you'll get it when it's ready. It's not your place to want it that much. Number 5, you ask for a coffee, the server spills it all over you. You get mad. The server gets all righteous and says it's not her fault for spilling it. It's your fault for getting angry. She spilt it to teach you a lesson. You ask what the lesson is. She says it's not her job to tell you, and you have to figure it out for yourself. So, metaphorically, we're stumbling around in the dark in this reality. We have no guidebook, no manual. Religious types will argue that we do in the forms of their holy books, but we don't really. We're just left to get on with it and make the best of it and try and figure it out. And there are spiritual types who will insist they've got it all worked out and they know exactly what's going on in this realm, but do they? Where is the evidence? Number 6, 1,000,000 people all order a coffee. They all want the same thing, a goddamn coffee. Not one coffee arrives. You all call for the server to explain herself. The server is nowhere to be seen. Sound familiar? So I'm starting to transition now into some comments I've received in response to previous videos from people out there. Got some interesting observations and perspectives, and I just want to share some of these. First off, somebody wrote in with some observations based on that video, manifestation flaws. And, just to add to what I outlined there with the coffee shop analogy, this guy wrote, we might crack manifestation jokes such as the following. The universe appears to have a serious hearing difficulty, given that we got more war just because we focused on reducing war. The universe appears not to be paying proper attention. If you get the opposite of what you asked for, then what's the point of asking? The universe is easily offended and only responds if you ask nicely. Bit of a snowflake then. The universe discriminates. It obliges some, yet denies others. The universe has a sense of humour deficit. And so, moving on to the comments I've received then, let's get into these properly now. So the first one I want to read out is from somebody who wrote, what is the incentive for doing good in this world? People will argue all day long that karma is real. So how to explain why bad things continually happen to good people? We're not given a rule book or a manual for how to navigate this realm. Religious types will argue that this is contained within the holy books, but how can we trust that these have not been tampered with over time? Spiritual gurus will claim they have all the answers, but how can we trust them when we don't have any verifiable proof or evidence? The existence of a benevolent God would never be accepted in a court case owing to verifiable evidence. A witness simply claiming that they know and have it all figured out would not fly in any kind of trial. I will be told that there are observable proofs of natural law and consequentialism in action. But are there really? If I dedicate a year to doing good deeds for others, can I expect to reap observable rewards as a result? If I parasite off others, lie to them and deceive them, I think they call them politicians, can I expect to receive punishment, observable punishment as a result? Probably not. That's not what we see. We see those who trample all over others and narcissistically, sociopathically dominate others without a thought for their natural rights, benefiting in this world, getting ahead. I mean, people might argue that punishment lies in some other realm beyond this one, after the point of death, and we don't know. But what we do know is, from what we can see, they appear to be doing just great. Big bank balances, nice cars, nice houses, and a big duper's delight grin on their face as they piss all over other people's rights and freedoms. That's what we do see. That is observable. Okay, so the next one, the only hypothesis that does make sense is that this life is a fully immersive 3D virtual reality video game. This is a common theme, which has cropped up in a lot of this correspondence, actually. And something you mentioned in one of your videos, Manifestation, is that God seems to have no sense of humor, just like an AI machine, which I found to be an interesting observation. Yes, AI is not trained to have a sense of humor or a sense of irony or sarcasm. It's not capable of it. We are definitely existing within a glorified electronic machine, and this is not reality. In fact, to suggest our experience here is reality is preposterous. If you consider a typical war video game, you would notice that the gaming environment is disproportionately balanced towards war, evil, killing, death, and destruction, with maybe a couple of cutaway scenes of beautiful places every now and then. You would also notice that the gamer is rewarded for creating war, doing evil deeds, killing enemies, and generally causing death and destruction. Sound familiar? We notice in our experience that stupid, annoying, selfish people are rewarded for being selfish, greedy, and backstabbing, and yet good people with a conscience are punished with poverty, frustration, disappointment, and obstacles. That's because good people aren't playing the game as intended. This is only my belief, but we're here to experience evil, not to be victims of evil, but to actively participate in its genesis and propagation. And by doing this, we are rewarded with action points, bonuses, wealth, power, lust, etc. God hasn't abandoned us. It's just that we are not playing the game as intended because we're meant to experience the full spectrum of existence. And at the moment, you and I are in the game environment to experience evil in all its guises. But for people like you and I, we have a deep empathy for others' suffering, and so we struggle in this realm. The only comfort is that it'll all be over soon, and I, for one, will be giving the finger to any so-called angelic entity who demands I return to complete a mission on Earth when I die or have an NDE. I will be walking past it and entering into the light for the after-gaming party, to which I will be giving this game a 1-star rating. By knowing this environment, would it be possible to operate in a way that is to our benefit? Surely every game has a backdoor hack that is possible to exploit. So it's interesting that somebody else picked up on this idea of this reality being like a 3D virtual reality video game. They simply wrote, everything outside of ourselves is a game and a 3D experience. No one saves us except us. Our true awakening or awareness is inwards. Live your best life. Be as authentic as you can. Help others that can't help themselves. Do not play in this game. Play your own game. Do what serves your soul. And then another one. Like yourself, I don't subscribe to the popular ideas about God that have been passed down to the population via the church, in particular, the idea that God is all benign. If anything, the disparate spiritual traditions handed down to us seem to have one message in common. Pain and suffering is inescapable. Look at all the myths and allegories. People descend into Hades and re-emerge enlightened. The phoenix has to go through fire to rise anew from the ashes. Kings are cut into pieces only to be put back together by heroic deeds, crucifixion and resurrection. People thrown into the sea then transform and become deities. You name it. At the same time, I don't consider myself to be nihilistic. My understanding is that the divine works through us all. It just requires some digging to experience it. When I was very ill during 2018 and 2019, it was by tapping into the God infinite energy within, especially through regular meditation and tweaking my belief system, that I was slowly able to heal and gradually experience greater inner peace. I'm still working on it. I lost a very good friend in 2022, someone who campaigned online vociferously without cessation against the lockdowns and the arms spears. Throughout it all, she was in a deep state of fear and unrelenting rage. She contracted cancer and was well aware that her inner emotional state had been a factor, as justified as she was in her opposition to what was happening. My friend would still be here had she been able to create some emotional boundaries. What I'm saying is, whatever our concept of reality and wherever we stand on the question of divinity, benign forces or not, life will never fully live up to our expectations. That said, every now and again, it does gratify us, throws us the odd bone or two, and sometimes even exceeds our assumptions. This seems to be the case, even when you're in a deep state of suffering and going through a particularly challenging period in your life. You do still seem to get the odd scrap of positivity, just enough to keep you going, just enough to keep you around and on the path that you need to be on. It can be very small, very minor. It will be just a minute or two each day, maybe, but it will just be something that you enjoy or that speaks to your soul in some way and offers you some kind of reassurance that it's worth keeping going. I've noticed that. Okay, the next individual to write in says, I feel life is a gift, and whilst it can be shrouded in pain and misery, and I'm sure people have lost a lot of hope recently, I don't think anyone is free of pain and misery ever. I mean, surely it's how we subjectively see it, process it, cope, and manage our lives around the pain and trauma we experience, because for each person, this will be different. It's this pain and trauma we experience in life that makes us more resilient. We learn those biggest lessons through pain and loss, and then move forward to be able to build the love for our own life and what you have in it. It sounds like such a huge, hard battle trying to figure out or fix the ways of the world, the bigger issues. And as you say, all you have witnessed is the pain when things don't change. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And it's down to us as individuals to find the little pieces of solace and love in our own lives while still being able to remain true to our beliefs and what we stand for. So the next one said, Hi Mark, just seen your recent video, God 4.0. I think we eventually get to this point when we've been down every rabbit hole possible. I'm now 100% convinced the people with all the wealth and all the power have knowledge of how this place truly operates. And in my 48 years on this realm, not once have I ever seen anybody use manifestation or the force to overthrow tyranny. I think this stuff could well be a trap or a distraction, false hope just to keep us suppressed. Goes back to my earlier point about how many people have prayed for this world to be a better place, and it just seems to keep getting worse. So what kind of loving God would allow that? And what's the point of this process of manifestation being in place? And I argue that it's not, if that's what we get from it. But why has there been such a massive push by the elites over the past few years to gain full control? It feels like we're almost racing against them, the ones who've awoken against the psychopaths. It's like they've had prior knowledge of this mass awakening. I don't subscribe personally myself, this is me speaking now, to this idea of a great awakening. It's obviously happening with certain individuals, but it's not happening on anywhere near as large a collective basis as it needs to make any kind of lasting difference. Just as an anecdote that I'll throw in here, we had a workman in the house the other day. It was a painter. He'd come in to do a few jobs. And I thought I'd test the waters with him because he was talking about the weather and how dreadful it was because it was pissing down with rain. And he said, yeah, that's April in Britain. And I said, yeah, it doesn't help with the chemtrails either, the spraying in the skies. And he said, yeah, exactly. Nanoparticulates of metal that comes down to the ground and gets ingested and causes dementia and Alzheimer's and all manner of brain disorders. And I was like, wow, this guy knows what time it is. And we ended up having a really good discussion about all the stuff that's going on. And he said, there's more people out there than you might think that kind of know about these things. They've studied these subjects, but they don't know what they can do about it. They feel powerless, they feel helpless, and so they do nothing because they don't know where to channel that knowledge. So it's one thing to have awareness of what's really happening, but it's another to put that to use. And if you don't put it to use, there's not really much point in having it in the first place. And I was saying to him that it's going to require large numbers of people coming together in collective unity and taking physical action against what we all face for it to make any kind of difference. And he agreed with me. But that's what we're lacking. Any kind of cohesiveness between those of us who seem to have twigged what's actually being done to us. So, just to pick up on this message, this lends itself to the idea that maybe the awakened ones deep down know change is coming and that our purpose is just to endure it until whatever shift in consciousness actually happens. It's all fucking weird, mate. One thing for sure, the awakened ones are all awake for a reason. Well, it will be what it will be. Next message. I think it's possible to manifest stuff, but not in the way everyone thinks. And Dave Murphy, talking about my recent chat with allegedly Dave, was on the right track when he said, if you focus on there not being war, all the universe hears is the word war. So again, it's a bit flawed, isn't it? We don't want any more war. Oh, what's that? War? War? You want war? Okay, here's some more war. Works really well. I think that in order to manifest, you have to put yourself in the state you would be in if whatever you wanted was already there. And that's virtually impossible, particularly if your life is shite. Goes back to my earlier analogy of the homeless starving guy, imagining that he's just had a banquet and he's dressed in a nice suit and he's got a comfy bed for the night, right? Is that going to make it happen? Probably not, eh? Do you remember those old Western films where at the end it would say, no horses were hurt during shooting? Well, take it from me. No humans are hurt during shooting. This realm is the devil's playground, so to speak, and all is deception. Your suffering is an illusion, as is your joy, and we are susceptible to these illusions and delusions because we have accepted the fact of our separateness, which is what binds us to reality. When we rejoin the source, our eyes are opened and we laugh as not only human suffering, we laugh at not only human suffering, but at human existence itself. We are far more than mere humanity. I have no answers as to why we separate ourselves, but the source is real and I have experienced it. Also, this doesn't mean that human suffering can or should be discounted. Suffering, while illusory, is at the same time real, a seeming paradox that can only be reconciled at the source. Humans can never hope to make sense of this realm, so don't knock yourselves out trying. Creation isn't good, in a moral sense, but in a physical sense. When you arrive at the source, you realize that existence and joy, love, bliss, nirvana, etc., are one and the same thing. Existence and love are inseparable. And when do you separate them? Well, then, welcome to the devil's playground where all is illusion and nothing is as it seems. I think that will do for now. We'll end this on a vaguely positive note. Plenty to ponder on there, plenty for people to feedback on. And I welcome any comments or any observations on any of the points raised in this video. So finally, a few announcements of some other things going on just to round out this video. I want to announce that I've got involved with a couple of natural health products. They are namely Masterpiece and NANO SOMA. Nothing to do with the SOMA out of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Both of these products are all about detoxing from many of the harmful elements that we build up in our bodies simply as a result of everyday living in this crazy world. So it's the crap that they're spraying in the skies. We can pick it up from water. We can pick it up from foods. We can pick it up from EMFs and radiation that we get from all kinds of devices all around us. Symptoms of modern living. So these compounds are all about clearing out the toxins, giving your body a purge, and firing up your natural immune functions. I'm no medical expert myself, but many others are, and they attest to how effective these products are. So there are links in the notes below to where you can get hold of this stuff and also get some testimonials on people that have used it. And there are affiliate links where if you want to buy any of these products for yourself, if you use the links that I've given, then I get a small proceed from that, which enables me to continue my work and just helps me to continue doing everything that I do. So you'll be helping yourself out, doing your body a favor, and giving me some small assistance as well. Just wanted to mention that. On that note, I have a Patreon channel. Videos of this nature I put out for free on my YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and I will continue to put most of my content out entirely for free. But I have started a Patreon channel for those who wish to support me. It's a choice. If you become a Patreon supporter, you get access to exclusive video content that I won't be posting anywhere else online. So it's 3 exclusive videos a month just for my Patreons. It's a good way of getting hold of this content, hopefully important information getting conveyed, and at the same time, you're supporting me and again, enabling my work to continue. So if you want to become a Patreon supporter, you can do so for as little as $10 a month. What's that, like 7, 8 quid, something like that? It's a negligible amount, but it does make a difference. So details of how to become a Patreon in the notes below. Upcoming conversations of the meaningful variety. I'm going to be talking with Howdy Mikowski. So he's a guy who gets into many of the same themes I've been covering in these God videos. And I've had it in mind for a while that it'd be very interesting for he and I to get together and exchange some views and just flesh all this stuff out. So I'm going to be chatting with Howdy very soon. Watch out for that on my regular channels. That will be getting put out as free output. Also, I've got a conversation coming with Slipmatt, the DJ. So, chatted to Danny Rampling in 2021. Now I'm going to be chatting to Slipmatt, who's a legendary figure within the dance music scene, particularly the early rave era in Britain when he was part of SL2. In recent years, Slipmatt has become something of an activist. He's woken up to what's going on in the world and he's become very outspoken about it. So looking forward to having a great chat with him. We'll probably spend the first 5-10 minutes talking about DJ stuff, and then we'll get down to the real business that we want to address with that one. Plenty more chats upcoming in the weeks and months ahead as well. And also many events. I've got many speaking events. I've got quite a few festivals in the spring and summer months where I'll be either delivering a presentation or doing a DJ set or doing both. There's a fair few events where I'll be doing both. So if you want to see whether I'm coming anywhere near you in the coming weeks and months, check out the events page on my main website. That's djmarkdevlin.com/events. They're all linked there. The next big one in the UK is Uprise and Shine at Hope, Sussex, near Hastings. That's happening over the first bank holiday weekend in May. I'll be there Saturday, the 4th of May, doing a talk and a DJ set. So get your tickets for that one if you can. Many of these events can only go ahead if people support them in advance by getting the tickets. You know, rolling up on the day puts the event in jeopardy because there are certain costs that have to be covered in advance, and that can only happen through advance tickets. So there's that one to mention. And then at the end of May, I'm going to be doing the Stand in the Light Festival, not standing in the light in whatever lies beyond this life, but it's a collaboration between Stand in the Park, my girl Sophia, and Darren Nesbitt of The Light newspaper, hence the Stand and the Light. So I'll be doing a DJ set at that one, and there's many great awakened musicians, truth and freedom types who are going to be performing at that event. That's near Workington in the Lake District, Cumbria, and that's over the late May bank holiday at the end of that month. And for anyone who happens to be out in Turkey, you never know, Antalya, on Friday, 31st of May, I'll be doing a DJ set out there as part of the Vibe Fitness Week. And for further details of that one, also go to the notes below this video. So thanks to everyone for watching. Looking forward to the feedback. Looking forward to seeing everyone out and about at some point. And the Monty Python sketch gone live continues, right? Do we have any other choice?